Okay. Okay, we are live, and I'd like to say hello to everybody. And let's see who's here, who comes in, and wait and see. And if you're joining us by the recorded message, in other words, you've joined us later, go ahead and turn to Hebrews chapter 11. That's where we're going to go. So, Hebrews chapter 11. And then I believe we'll go to Genesis. I know chapter 37 some. We're going to take the latter part of Genesis for sure. And we'll talk about Joseph tonight. So I see two are listening, but I'd like to see who all's here. So Genesis 37 following in Hebrews 11 is where we're going to start with tonight. All right. So what we'll do, I'll go ahead. So I know I have at least two households here. We're going to go to Hebrews 11. And last week we talked about Jacob and how Jacob blessed Joseph and Joseph's two sons. And we read in Hebrews 11, verse 22, by faith, Joseph, when he was dying, made mention of the departure of the children of Israel and gave instructions concerning his bones. So I want to look at that. And this is something that's going to take several hundred years to accomplish, at least 400, for Joseph to get buried. Now, if you remember in the last class, we discussed how Jacob had a funeral given to him by Joseph and the Egyptians, and they took him straight out of the land of Egypt into the land where it would be the promised land later and where he was buried in the cave of Machpelah. And so Jacob being buried with Isaac and also Abraham. And Joseph wants to be buried there too. He does not want to be buried in Egypt. Egypt was where he lived, but Egypt was really not his home. We don't see him ever calling Egypt or making Egypt his home. And we'll see the tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh, some of the spearheads of going into idolatry later on. And their mother was an idol worshiper. Remember, he married the daughter of the priestess of On, a Potiphar, an idol that they worshipped in Egypt. And his kids being raised even by him and by a mother that seems to have been steeped in idolatry, even though they believed in God, and their children later on, we'll see, of course, will go out of Egypt with the others, that they're going to be some of the first and some of the easiest, I should say, to go into idolatry when they get into the promised land and make their own nation and things get bad. Ephraim and Manasseh were bad to go into idolatry. And so looking at all of these, Joseph, when he was dying, I'm going to go to that. And I said we're going to go to Genesis chapter 37 to the end of Genesis. I'm not going to start, I guess, at 37. Let me just start there at the back at Genesis 50, and where we see Joseph and his death. And I want to go down to the latter verses of Genesis chapter 50, and we will see not much of Joseph's life after Jacob died. But in verse 24, verses following of Genesis 50, we read, "And Joseph said to his brethren, I am dying, but God will surely visit you and bring you out of this land to the land of which he swore to Abraham, Isaac, and to Jacob. Then Joseph took an oath from the children of Israel, saying, God will surely visit you, and you shall carry my bones from here. So Joseph died, being 110 years old, and they embalmed him, and he was put in a coffin in Egypt." Now, here we have an ending to his life and an ending to the book of Genesis. The book of beginnings ends with the death of Joseph. And Joseph had faith that he would be carried into the land of Canaan, even though he was not there yet. He had faith that he would be carried there. And so we're going to talk about that. Now, we have Anna Gerganus here, and we have Rhonda Gerganus here. And Rhonda, I'm finally online. Great, awesome. And Emily, Rhonda said, tell Emily thanks for all her help. So we have 9 people watching, but we have Anna, we have Rhonda. I'm hoping some more will join in, because wanting to do a good activity tonight that we can all get in on, but don't have but 2 people queued in. Drew's here. All right, Drew Zaster, I'm here too. Very good. If you're here, go ahead and tell me, because I want to do a good activity that I think we'll enjoy. Sorry about shaking the computer. So I want to go back and say a little bit, and then we'll come back to our visitors and guests in a minute. Joseph had his body, or had his brethren promise to take his body out of Egypt and take it to Canaan. And they made an oath. He took an oath from them. And God will visit you, and you shall carry up my bones from here. Don't know. This is interesting that he did not get to do that right then and right there. Could be several things going on that we don't know about even already. I do not know. But here he is with the faith. However, the main thing is he had the faith that he could be, his body would be carried to Egypt by his descendants. Now that is a lot of faith. So look at what faith he had. First, he had faith that he would have descendants at that time. Now, we don't know, any of us at any given time could be left childless, left without an heir here on earth. Our line of the family could stop. And that was faith that he had, that he would have a line of people. And it's possible that he knew about the 400-year span that God told Abraham. And so that is a great deal of faith that he would have had he talked about that. Also, he had faith that his people would carry that out. Now, he made them take an oath to do it. But with that oath, he believed that it was enough to allow them to carry him out of Egypt and bury his body. He refused to be buried in Egypt. There's another article of his faith. He refused to be buried in Egypt. He could have just given up and said, well, I guess we're going to be here. No, there was a promise that he would not be, that they would not remain in Egypt. And he wanted to see that they would carry him. In Exodus chapter 13 and verse 19, we read, Moses took the bones of Joseph with him, for he had made the sons of Israel solemnly swear, saying, God will surely take care of you, and you shall carry my bones from here with you. So here is another part of his faith. He had faith that God would deliver them from Egypt. There's another part of faith, that not only are they going to be in Egypt and leave, but God's going to take care of them. God will take care of them and make this happen. And that is in Exodus 13 and verse 19. So the faith in God itself there is remarkable, that he knew that God would take care of them. Now we see in Joshua, let's go all the way to Joshua. Joshua chapter 24, verse 32. Now they buried the bones of Joseph, which the sons of Israel brought up from Egypt, at Shechem in the piece of ground which Jacob had bought from the sons of Hamor, the father of Shechem, for 100 pieces of money. And they became the inheritance of Joseph's son. So I said, Cave of Machpelah, this looks like he's buried at Shechem in the piece of ground Jacob had bought. That may be something different. So I don't want to teach something that's not true. This says Shechem. And the piece of ground Jacob bought from the sons of Hamor, from the father of Shechem, for 100 pieces of money, and they became the inheritance of Joseph's sons. So, looking at this happened. They carried it. Moses had his bones carried out. But remember, who was Moses' successor? Joshua. Joshua, we see in Joshua 24 and verse 32, we see in his book where they actually buried the body of Joseph. And here we are, some 440, because they wandered in the wilderness 40 years. Years after he had died, he had faith that this would happen. This faith that he had in that is just so remarkable. It's mentioned in Hebrews 11. So Joseph's faith is something to be recognized. So here we are. Emily said, "You know I'm here." And Cookie, Ollie and I are watching on TV. Very good. Awesome. So glad to have everybody. And I hope more even join us. But looking at this, we see that Joseph's faith was that he would be buried in Egypt in a coffin, no doubt, a wealthy coffin. Remember who Joseph is. He's not a little nobody. He's second in command of the entire country of Egypt. And here he is given instructions for his burial. And there we have it. Now, looking at this, brethren, said this to his brethren. I don't know if that means his brother. Some of them could have lived older than him. They would have been older. Or if it just means his circle of friends, his brethren, his family, they could mean that too. Now, looking at this, Joseph was the son of Rachel. Very interesting that we have Leah and Jacob. Seems to be that they're buried together. Rachel had her own tomb, the tomb of Rachel. Rachel was his favorite wife, but it could be that look at what happened. And this is from a commentary. I can't take origin of this thought, but I want you to think of this. Rachel died, and Leah had Jacob alone for a number of years. And you have to ask the question, did she finally win his love? And did Jacob see that her love was more meaningful than this passionate fits of passion that he had for Rachel, beautiful as she was? Seems as if through the scriptures we get Leah kind of having a victory. Rachel's gone. And remember, it's through Leah that Jesus comes, through Judah of Leah. And Jacob is buried in the cave of Machpelah. And Jesus came through Leah. And looks as if what we have in the scriptures, Jacob and Leah were buried by each other. But now, let me say this about Rachel. As much as we talk about her beauty. Rachel loved her idols so much. Remember, she stole them and buried them. Remember all of that? Very well, very well possible that she continued to be an idolater. She stole Laban's gods. And then here's Joseph. Now, Joseph married a pagan priest. Joseph lived a little while with his mother. She died not with Joseph, but with Benjamin. And so she could have planted some seeds of idolatry in Joseph. We don't know. Joseph married an idol worshiper. But anyway, Joseph was put in a coffin. And the word coffin here doesn't mean like the burial caskets of today. It literally means a box. And of course, they call them sarcophagus, sarcophagus in Egypt. The same word is used, by the way, for Ark of the Covenant. He would have been put in a type of box, and the type of could be the type of box like the Egyptian mummies were put in. We just don't know. But anyway, so I wanted us. I was hoping we'd have a good crowd here tonight, but since we got who we've got, we're going to do something. Now, you know, Joseph is a lot like Isaac in that there are a lot of comparisons made between Joseph and Jesus. So that's what I want us to do now. Let's look at Joseph, and you can start in Genesis chapter 35. And we even call Joseph, and I've preached this sermon before, Joseph a type of Christ. So if Joseph is a type of Christ, that means there are going to be several similarities, several comparisons, several instances of foreshadowing, if you will, of Jesus coming through Joseph. So why don't we look and see if we can come up with different ways Joseph was a type or a comparison to Jesus. So I'm going to leave it to you, but now if we don't get answers, I will give you some verses to look at and get you some clues. So can we think of some ways that they were a type? Okay, Drew Zaster, they were both in command of something very good. Joseph was in command of all of Egypt. Jesus was in command of all the spiritual world, and Jesus even commanded demons. Remember the centurion who told Jesus, "I'm one in authority like you are. If I say one to go, you go, and if I say another to go, he goes. And you can command this evil spirit, this sickness, to be cleaned and to be removed." And Jesus said he hadn't seen such faith in Israel. And so Jesus was in command over the demons, command over sicknesses. He was in command. We call him the King of Kings. Joseph was in command. So they were both in command of Jesus. All right. JKM 75 says he saves his people. Very good. They both saved their people. Joseph saved his brothers by bringing them down to Egypt. Literally saved their life. Again, had he not, that line would have been snuffed out because there was a great famine. Jesus did the same thing. Jesus saves our souls. And Joseph saved their physical. Jesus saves our spiritual. All right. They both went to Egypt. Very true. Remember when Jesus was a baby and Herod was going to kill the babies? They fled into Egypt, and they fled into Egypt and left out of Egypt. I'm going to add to that, they both went to Egypt. They both came out of Egypt. Now, Joseph, we know, went into Egypt being sold and was down there. But look at this. They both went to Egypt. They both came out of Egypt going to the same country. All right. JKM 75. he was rejected by some. Yeah, in fact, by his own brethren. Joseph was rejected by his own brethren. Jesus was rejected by his own people, his own brethren, his own Jewish brethren. They rejected him, did not accept him. And so the same. Okay. Cookie says people were jealous of both. Pharaoh, Jesus, and Joseph, his brothers. Yes, people were jealous of both of these characters, weren't they? Uh, you look at Jesus, the rulers, Herod and Pilate, all the way down to the religious rulers of the synagogue. They were jealous of Jesus's popularity. They did not like it that he was stealing the crowd from them. You see, up until that time, the Pharisees had been the popular crowd because the Sadducees were kind of the bad guy. And now Jesus is showing bad things that the Pharisees are doing too. They didn't like that. He became more popular than them. He lived a better life than they did. They were supposed to be the popular ones. Everybody's supposed to like them. And they were jealous of him. Now Joseph's brothers were jealous of him because his father loved him and gave him the coat of many colors we talked about last week. But there they are, jealous of him, and he was well loved by his father, and they were jealous. Okay. Uh, ESG 1977, they both stood up to temptation. Joseph to Potiphar's wife, Jesus to Satan. Okay. Yes, they did. Now, Joseph, every day, Potiphar's wife came to him, lie with me, lie with me. Every day. Jesus, we read of the temptation of Satan, but those three were not the only, because we'll read later that he was tempted in all manner and points like we are. He was tempted, whatever temptation you're facing, Jesus did too, in some way. Not with the same machines and technology. He wouldn't be tempted to pull a car out in front of someone rudely, because he didn't have cars. But that temptation to treat others unkindly definitely would have hit him with other apparatus that they had. But Jesus definitely was tempted. Joseph was tempted, and they both withstood the temptations that we are given. They've suffered. Okay, Anna Gerganus. They both foretold the future. Remember, Joseph foretold the future through his dreams, through his dreams that he dreamed that the stars, the sun, the moon, they all bow down to him. And the sheaves of grain, they all bowed down to him. And that happened in the future. Jesus told the future in many instances. For example, what would happen to Jerusalem and what would happen when he returns. They both foretold the future. And both of what they foretold came true. Joseph also foretold what would happen with the famine that would come, the dream that Pharaoh had, the 7 cows that were thin eating up the 7 cows that were fat, and grains of corn doing the same thing. And when they did so, you couldn't even tell they had eaten anything. They were still gaunt and ugly. And that was a foretelling that God, through Joseph, foretold the future, that there would be 7 years of famine and 7 years of 7 years of plenty, then 7 years of famine. So they both foretold the future. Yes, their fathers loved them, Emily said. Their fathers loved him. Genesis chapter 37, verse 3 says this. Genesis 37 and verse 3. We see how Jacob loved Joseph. And this, of course, is part of the cause we need to, as parents, look at that. When you play favorites, you brew up resistance among your children. Now, Israel loved Joseph more than all his children because he was the son of his old age. Also, he made him a tunic of many colors. And of course, we know that God loves his son. He said, "This is my what? Beloved son, in whom I am well pleased." Matthew 3:17. So beloved, loved, he loved him, and both of their fathers loved them. Both of their fathers loved him. I had one of the most beautiful things told to me the other day by a young man. We're talking about our dads, and he said, he said, "I do not have one negative memory of my father." He said, "I only have good memories." And I thought, what a wonderful testament to that man. And that's the kind of dad. Of course, it's too late for me. I probably have created quite a few negative memories, and usually we do. But we should know that our fathers love us, and we should, if we are a father, love our children. Okay, from Drew Zaster. Joseph's father thought he was dead and found him again. And Jesus was dead and came back too. Very good point. It's kind of like Joseph, in Jacob's eyes, experienced a resurrection. And I'm using that term in a very figurative sense because we know Joseph didn't die. But to Jacob, it was just as good as him being dead. He believed. It was a lie, when believed, can have the same effect as the truth. And I want you to know that. And I'm going to put who told me that. A quote: "A lie, when believed, can have the same effect as the truth." Now, the man who told me that, I will know him, and Cookie, you will know him. His name was Leonard Johnson. Leonard Johnson told us that in class, and I wrote that in my Bible. A lie, and because he told us that one day in a Bible class. A lie, when believed, can have the same effect as the truth. That's true. If you believe a lie, it can make you feel just as bad as if that lie is true. Jacob believed the lie that his son was dead, and it had the same effect on him that it did if it was really true. He mourned and thought he would go to his grave that way, mourned many years. So when Joseph was discovered to be alive, definitely Jacob was like receiving his son again. And we know Jesus died and he was raised again, and God raised him from the dead. So he experienced a resurrection, a literal resurrection, like Joseph in a figurative sense. That's a very good point. Okay. Both, this is from Anna Greganis, both have blood and a robe in the story. I'd never put that together. That's true. Both of them have blood and a robe. In fact, it was a goat. It was a goat's blood, and that could be something that they would sacrifice, like the ram. I call that a type of goat. There may be a scientific difference in some of them, but anyway, both of them like a sacrificial blood type. The blood that was there was on the robe, and no doubt Jesus's robe would have blood on it. He was so bloody. They both have blood. They both have a robe, that coat of many colors, and Jesus's robe. That's a very good point. Okay. Also from Anna, they both were made fun of for claiming they were or would be the ruler over others. Yes. And in Joseph's case, it came so ever true. In Jesus' case, we will see it come true as every knee shall bow and every tongue shall confess that he is Lord and he will be ruler. Every disbeliever will believe one day. Now, did Joseph's brothers believe it at first? Not even his mother and father believed it. Of course, not Rachel, but Leah. Leah would most likely have been alive, and that would have been like a mother to him. After Rachel was gone, she would have been what he had. But definitely, they all were making fun of Joseph. They all made fun of Jesus for claiming that they would be the ruler. Okay, all right. So true. Yes, I see that after the phrase "alive," the sense "alive when believed" can have the same effect as the truth. If you did not know Brother Leonard Johnson, he was just a joy to know, a treat of a man. He came and spoke for us on the subject of abortion years and years ago when I was in college. He came and spoke to us at Dovertown. And I remember my Aunt Flora said it was the best sermon on abortion she had ever heard. But all right, let's look at this. Both of their garments were taken from him, Emily says. Very true. Both of their garments were taken from them. So Joseph's garment is stolen from him. His brothers take it and put him in this pit. Jesus's robe that was gotten for him was then taken. They didn't want to tear it. It was made with one seam, so they cast lots and they divided it, but it was taken from Jesus. And the possessions of a criminal in the Roman days could fall to his executor sometimes, even though there was Jesus's mother. Nobody said, "Oh, this is your son's." Of course not. This was a good robe. They wanted it. It was taken from him. Okay. This is from Cookie, both were forgiving of their brethren. Absolutely. Joseph forgave his brothers in just the most beautiful scene of forgiveness. And here's the beauty of this forgiveness. It wasn't just a matter of holding a grudge. He had at his fingertips the very power to make them die in the most miserable, torturous ways that he could have thought of. But instead of a miserable, torturous way, he chose to love them. Jesus, too, could have called angels to come and set him free from the cross. Instead, what does he pray? Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. And then he made a way for us to get forgiveness for all of our sins. And look at this, how forgiving he is, and of those who even crucified him, like Joseph was forgiving of those who sold him. Okay, Joseph was sold for 20 pieces of silver. Jesus was sold, betrayed for 30 pieces of silver, and also by people very close to them. And so look at this, betrayed for silver, and Joseph by his own brothers. Jesus, and this is ironic, by Judas, who was the treasurer of the apostles. You know, we like to look at Judas sometimes and forget that he was so trusted that they gave him money. Now, he was stealing from it. They made a bad choice, but he was trusted. There again, a lie when believed can have the same effect as the truth. They believed him to be trustworthy when he was not, and therefore they fully trusted him. But he was very close to Jesus. Were he not, he would not have been chosen as an apostle. There were many people that were not so close or not so good that were around at that time that Jesus overlooked and did not choose to be an apostle. Judas was chosen to be an apostle. Judas worked miracles when they went out and the limited commission, and when they went out and they when they healed, he had the power to work miracles, but then he threw it all away and took his life. Yeah. All right. J. Kellum, 75. Providence when times are bad. That's the whole story of Joseph, how the providence of God brought things back. And really, Jesus is a lot of that too. The providence of God brought him to earth, even. And when Jesus, and you look at the story of, for example, times were so bad they couldn't pay their taxes. And so Jesus knew where a fish was that had money in its mouth. We don't know. Did the fish swallow somebody's coins that they dropped into the ocean? Did the fish, we don't know how that got there, but it was a way made for them to go and pay their taxes for sure. Okay, Cookie says they both feed their enemies or evildoers to them. Yes, they did. Now, Joseph had them all fed with Benjamin now getting the bigger plate. Benjamin had more than them. He, kind of made a difference there. Benjamin's his real brother. The other brothers didn't understand it, but they weren't jealous of Benjamin. They were so confused and perplexed, they didn't know what to think. It seems like from the reading. But Jesus fed, Jesus was reversed in a way because Jesus fed the 5,000 and the 4,000. And when he fed them, some of this crowd, no doubt, were the same people who cried, "Crucify him." Later on, we see in Acts chapters 2 and 3, and with Stephen, this in chapter 7 of Acts, these people that Jesus fed later did evil to them. Joseph fed them after they'd done evil to them. And we know Jesus would have fed his enemies as he taught that afterward. Okay. Anna, both were sentenced when they were innocent. Very true. They absolutely were. Joseph did nothing to Potiphar's wife. Jesus did nothing to anybody, and yet they were both sentenced unfairly to be told that they were guilty. Okay. Cookie says people bow down before both. Absolutely did. And that's what Joseph dreamed. And we'll see people bowing to Jesus. We see the triumphal entry and them bowing down. And we will bow to Jesus later. Okay. Also, they were exalted after and through humiliation. Before honor comes humility is one of the proverbs. And absolutely, we have exalted here later. Later, Jesus rose from the dead, his ascension, he was exalted. 12 brothers, 12 apostles. And can we name the brothers? Can anyone name in the brothers? And I don't mean look it up. Can anyone off the top of your head name them? You can memorize them. Now, this is how I was taught just to do it. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Issachar, Zebulun, Joseph, and Benjamin. And just going over and over, 2 or 3 or 4 at a time. That's how I was taught it. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah. My Granny Pounds would have me say that over and over. Then we went to the next group, just over and over till we learned it. So yeah, okay. There's a song. There's a song that they have as well. Emily can. Okay. Cookie says they both stood before rulers. Yes, they did. Joseph before Pharaoh, Jesus before Herod, Jesus before Pilate, and Joseph before Potiphar, who was ruler over Joseph and who was a high-ranking official in Egypt. So by all means. Okay, so I know there's a Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah. Seems like how it goes. I remember that. So All right. So Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Issachar, Zebulun, Joseph, and Benjamin were the 12 brothers. Now, can you name the apostles? That is a song too. Jesus called them one by one: Peter, Andrew, James, and John, Philip and Bartholomew, Doubting Thomas, and Matthew, James the son of Alphaeus, Simon also Thaddeus, the 12th apostle Judas made. Jesus was by him betrayed. And then later on, Matthias took Judas's place. And then we'll have Paul coming too, won't we? Okay. Cookie says both were falsely accused. Yes, their accusations were lies. Potiphar's wife made up a lie that said he had made advances toward her. Jesus's accusers lied so badly that their stories contradicted with each other, and their lives were so deplorable they would cancel each other out. They were that adamant. The whole court scene, and I use court in the most loose term of it. Courts are supposed to make it where things turn out fair, but the whole courtroom scene of Jesus just makes my blood boil. You have all of these false accusers coming up, and they're so bad, they're lying so much that today, if you had something come up and that many false witnesses came up, a decent judge would have just dismissed the case. But they wanted him crucified so badly that they ignored the fact that they made up all these lies. The only thing that they could get him was him being king, and all of that was Caesar. Okay. Okay, let's see. Yep, if I sing it. The people who wronged Joseph and Jesus ended up needing them. Yes, and that is true too. And the people who wronged Jesus need him spiritually still. And some of them don't know it yet. Some of them think they have him and they don't. And some of them don't care. And the people who wronged Joseph, no, they knew it. They ended up needing Joseph to feed them. We need Jesus to feed us a spiritual food. Now, I want to look at my list here. Genesis 37:23, Joseph's brothers conspired against him, and they took counsel against Jesus too. So I want to add that to the list, that Joseph's brothers, they conspired. They got in there and made up this whole story, and really not only did they conspire, Potiphar's wife conspired later, didn't she? So there's the verse for that. And they took counsel against Jesus according to Matthew 27, verse 1. So there is another comparison that they conspired. There was a conspiracy with it, and it's listed that way. Here's something else that we did not get into, and that is this. When we see Joseph, and when he's doing well with Potiphar, when he's doing well with the prison, and when he's doing well with Pharaoh, everything was laid into Joseph's trust. Everything was laid into Joseph's trust. Everything that Potiphar had, he wouldn't even worry, because Joseph was so trustworthy. Well, how is that comparable to Jesus, you may ask? What does John 3:35 teach us? Well, that God has given all things into his hand. Okay. All right. Drew Zastra, their names both start with a J and end with a S. Drew, would you please spell the word Joseph for us, please? Okay. All right. But they do start with a J. Okay. We'll give you that. They're both, and their names do start with a J. Okay. Very similar though, right? Very, very similar uh, beginning and ending. Okay. Uh, and let me say this too. When do you remember when Joseph appeared before his brothers first? They didn't recognize him, and neither did they recognize Jesus as their Messiah. Joseph's own brothers did not recognize him. The Jews did not recognize their Messiah either. Okay. Cookie sent a cute little picture of a smiley face doing something, waving, I guess. Drew said, I fixed it before you said that. Okay. All right. But Joseph's own brothers, when he appeared before him, they did not recognize him as their leader, that it was him, and they knew this guy was a leader, but they did not know it was their brother. The Jews did not recognize Jesus, that they knew as Jesus as their Messiah. Neither one of them were recognized as that. And this is something, here's something that I don't think anybody mentioned was, if you remember, when they arrested Joseph, they bound him. Well, so was Jesus. Jesus was bound in Matthew 27, verse 2. Joseph was bound in Genesis 39 and 30. Jesus was bound. They tied ropes around Joseph like a prisoner, and they tied up Jesus. Jesus was bound as well. Now, I'm kind of surprised somebody didn't get this one, because we're deep thinkers here, but since we didn't, I do want to give this. Do you ever think that both of them were condemned with two criminals? Joseph was condemned with the baker and the butler. Jesus was condemned, was crucified with the two thieves. This is Genesis chapter 40 and verse 2 and 3. And this is in Luke chapter 23 and verse 32. So, Dima said, we just ran out of time. Well, I know, and I'm, because of time kind of running out. And if y'all think of more, be typing them in. I'm just giving you some from a list that I have. And but this is something to think about. They were both condemned and were there. How can you say, suffering their sentence with two criminals? Now, I know the two in the prison were not the only ones, because Joseph had charge over the two. I'm sorry, over the whole prison. And this gets deep too. Now, if you remember, Joseph was called the interpreter of dreams, right? And in one of the dreams that the butler and the baker had, it ended up that the butler was given his life back. The baker's life was killed. One criminal was given life and the other was condemned. Genesis 40, 21 to 22. And it was only to one of the criminals that Jesus said in Luke 23, 43, today you shall be with me in paradise. And so both of them had one criminal given life, the other one not. So definitely there's a comparison there between the two. And also, Joseph, we mentioned that they were both loved by their fathers. I want to pull something else into that love, and that is this. Joseph was trusted. Joseph was trustworthy and wise. God said that this is my beloved son in whom I am well pleased. He was pleased with Jesus's work as Joseph's bosses were pleased with his work. So there's a comparison to they're both trustworthy and they were both wise. We know the wisdom of Jesus, how he thwarted all that the religious leaders and other people tried to stump him with questions, and they couldn't stump him. There was a point to where from that day on, no one else asked him any questions. Okay. Now, we touched on this. I'm going to say it again and give some scriptures. But Joseph was made ruler over all of Egypt, and Jesus said, "All power has been given unto me." And this is Matthew 28, verse 18, I believe is where he said that. Let me check that right quick and make sure that I have those numbers right. I can remember a song better than I can a number, and that is correct. Matthew 28 and verse 18. Now, Joseph, according to Genesis 41 and 45, married a foreign bride who shared in his glory. Believers in Christ were joint heirs with him in his glory, and the church is his bride. The church is the bride of Christ, and we definitely want to, point that out. So the church is the bride of Christ, and the bride of Joseph, a foreign bride, and not all of Jesus' bride were Jews. The Gentiles too were allowed into this. So Joseph married a foreign bride, and Jesus, both of these brides shared in their glory. And I want to look at something else. Joseph's brothers later repented for what they did, and so did some who pierced Jesus. But we see Zechariah 12:10, they shall look upon me whom they have pierced, and they shall mourn. Zechariah 12:10, I'm sending that to you. Joseph's brothers later repented for what they did to him, Genesis 42, verse 7. And that was something that was something that they both compared out of. So looking at this, I do want to make this comparison, and yet we don't know and we don't understand a lot of all what happened here, I realize, but I do want to make this comparison between the two, and that is this. Joseph was cast into a pit and then later delivered out of it. Genesis 37:24 and then 28. When Jesus died, we see he ascended into the lower parts of the earth and later ascended into heaven. And that's Ephesians 4:9. Now, there are a lot of scholars' interpretations on exactly what happened here with Jesus. And we know that there are just some things that we're not going to know all about. It's not meant for us to know, not our business, or we would know. We're told what we need to know. And this Ephesians 4:9 mentions him ascending into the lower parts of the earth, but that is definitely a comparison between Joseph, who did the same thing. He was cast into a pit, later delivered out of it, and Jesus was descended into the lower parts of the earth and ascended into heaven. And that's all on the list that I have. And there there are some good websites out here with a lot of maps and archaeology and things like that that we used to buy in books, and we see them now in our own websites. And uh, this was from one of those, a BibleHistory.com website that had this list, and I thought it was interesting to share with you. So uh, I want to say uh, thank you to everybody for your participation and uh, for your answers. Y'all came up with more than the list I had, just like you did with Isaac. That is very good. And Emily, here's another one. I started to say that last one. King James KJV says that Joseph was lifted up, then Jesus was also lifted. Now, there's a good comparison. Yes, Joseph was lifted up out of the pit. Jesus was lifted up onto the cross. So, uh, anyway, yes, absolutely. So, so I appreciate everybody's comments and everybody's answers. And yes, I'm going to say something here. Cookie put, "Happy birthday, Joan. Today would have been my mother's birthday." And so they say their birthday in heaven. I don't know if that is the correct way of putting that, and not, as heaven, we're told, is one long day too. But uh, I hope that, well, if you're in heaven, though, you're happy. You are happy that you're so happy that joys on the earth seem as nothing, trials on the earth seem as nothing even. Uh, so absolutely, everyone. This is another one. Everyone, keep praying for the prayer list. Almost every day there's a change or there's an addition. Uh, I want us to remember the family of Carol Reed. She was on that list and she passed away, I was told. So there's a change. But then with the COVID-19, yeah, we're going through some scary times. We're starting school back, and we're hoping we're doing everything the right way. We're trying our best to make things safe, and it's going to need a lot of prayer. We're trying to keep the country running, the economy, the education, and some of it we know will have to be done by computers at home, and that's the crossroads many of our families are facing now. Do we want to educate our children at home or in another place? I ask your prayers for that situation. That is a big situation. That's huge. So please keep your prayers up for that. Another prayer request: remember Tim Appling and his family. His sister passed away. And also, let's remember Candace. She has COVID and needs our prayers. So please keep all these in your prayers. I enjoy doing this with you, and I hope that you enjoy doing things like this. And again, if you're not able to contribute via the chat box, I hope you and your families are talking to each other and answering these at home. I know that I've talked to some of you, and y'all tell me that you do, and you'll tell me, about your children who give answers. That's good. They need to. They need to be given answers. We need to teach our children, and that's what we're supposed to do. So keep doing what you're supposed to do on that, and I encourage you to keep it up. So we are. Cookie said, "Which sister?" I do not know. I'm going to let you ask Emily that in private, because I do not know which sister it is. And there's like 12 of that family, so I do not know. I do know this: I enjoyed my time with every one of you today, and I look forward to coming back with you next Wednesday and Sunday at 2 o'clock. Sunday at 2 o'clock, and Wednesday at 6 o'clock. Let me say this. I do need to make this important announcement. We are striving to do the Bible Bow. That means we're going to have to do it in Walker County via separate congregations sending in their answers to Brother Latham, who's collecting them and is going to see via some electronic format, I imagine, who has first, second, and third place. We are studying 1 Thessalonians. 1 Thessalonians 1 through 5. August the 4th, we're going to attempt to do something, hopefully part virtual for some of our members, and maybe others can meet. Maybe others, maybe some of us can meet and do half meeting, half virtual. I do not know, but the Bible Bow study, the Bible Bow chapters to study is 1 Thessalonians. I'm going to preach on 1 Thessalonians Sunday. So Sunday for morning and afternoon, I'm going to give some lessons on the book of 1 Thessalonians. These are very short chapters. I think one of them only has like 18 verses. So it is not a great deal of material to study. And I encourage you to study with, as you're studying other things, to read over 1 Thessalonians. And Sunday morning at the building, I'm going to do some of that lesson, some of that book. And then on my 2 o'clock service, I'm going to do some more. May get to do 1 through 4 and then 5. I may have to divide it up as I don't have that lesson ready yet. I want to divide it some way. But anyway, let's study and pray for this Bible Bow situation. The dream is that after Christmas, we can go back to doing it in normal ways, but now man makes his plans, the Lord directs his steps. The Lord may have a different idea. We don't know. His providence may not include us doing that. So we pray that the Lord's will be done and all everything. So I want to tell you about that. And that also is changing what we're studying in our Google Meet class for our young people. We've switched from Acts to 1 Thessalonians, since that's what the Bible Bow is now. And I have a list of what we'll do after Thessalonians. We're taking some of the epistles. So thank you, everybody, for joining in with us. And from my family to yours, much love and happiness. May God's richest blessings come upon you, and so that you may have a very good evening and a good week. Thank you. Good night.